Hi everyone, Molton here. Welcome back to another video in our speedrun. So today we get into the Caro-Kann. This is our first Caro-Kann for the series, I think. And let's see, there's a lot of actual different variations you can play against the Caro-Kann, a lot of gambity ones as well. I'm going to go for d4 and e5. So I think this is a really good one. It's in the tile variation where they play bishop f5 and you play the move pawn to h4. Especially at this level, this is a very aggressive approach, can sort of pay off quite well. So after the move pawn to h6, we tend to go g4 here as white. The idea is that if black drops the bishop back to h7, then we sacrifice a pawn with e6. This is the main idea of the variation. Whereas if black goes back with the move bishop to d7, we have a couple of options. That you can play h5, which is very, very interesting. You can also play the move knight to c3, which is also very, very interesting. So I'll play the move knight to c3 here. So e6. Let's continue with bishop to e3 here. So one of the ideas here for white in this position is to prevent black from playing c5. And also we want to prevent black from playing the move pawn to h5 in some instances as well. So because our opponent has actually forced us to play h5, we're going to push the pawn up. I think instead black probably should have played h5 himself to try and freed a square up on f5 for his knight. But in this case, black has gone instead to go bishop e7 and bishop g5 to try and get this bishop developed. So we go queen to d2. Let's we're happy to trade off these bishops. That's fine. Now if black goes queen g5 though, I'm probably not going to trade off queens. So yeah, okay. So he doesn't go queen g5, but if he did, I'll probably just slide the queen across to g3 and play f4. So here white has a very, very pleasant position because we have a lot of space on the king side, and black hasn't managed to get in the key pawn break, which he wants to get in pretty much every single position, and that is the move pawn to c5. So if black is unable to get in the move pawn to c5 in these positions, then there's really no counterplay for him on the queen side. So is knight a6 threatening c5? So if it's not threatening c5, then I wouldn't worry too much. But I think it might actually be preparing to play this move pawn to c5 next. So I could just take and give up my bishop if I want to. It's probably fine to do so. I could also play this move like knight to a4 to again keep an eye out on this c5 square. Could also play knight f3, c5. Maybe I have bishop takes a6. Pawn takes here. Let's say I take back. But that seems okay for black actually, maybe, because at least he managed to get in this move. You know, I'm tossing up basically between allowing him to play it or playing knight a4 first. It's hard to say because in both situations I do have a very pleasant position still. Whereas if I take the knight, I mean, he probably has to take back with the queen, because if he takes back with the pawn, then knight a4, knight c5 becomes even stronger. So he has to take back with the queen after bishop takes knight, and then try to play b6 and c5 again. In the meantime, I also want to play f5. Okay, I'm just going to play knight f3. I think even if he plays d5, my knight gets to a good square on d4. And then it does support f5, so it's probably fine. Yeah, so he doesn't go for c5 at all. Which gives me time to play other moves. So I can maybe throw in this king b1 move. This is always a useful move to play. Just improves your king position, puts it on a better square. Okay, now my plan is to clamp down. If I can go knight a4, maybe swing my queen across to a3 next, then I can maybe create a bind on the queen side. Especially this c5 square, which is very, very important. Okay, so my opponent's trying to break out on the queen side, king side now with g6. It might be a good time to play knight a4. Okay, queen a5, that makes sense. Now the idea is to go queen to a3 to attack this knight on e7. So queen a3. If I can go c3, b4, then my position is really, really good. Because then the queen has to move and then I can capture the knight and throw the other knight into c5 square, but it's probably too slow because black has b5 coming. Yeah, like I said, black's bishop is very, very stuck here. It can't really get into the game. So he needs to get a pawn break in. Yeah, so he goes c5. Might actually be a very good time to have played c5. Yeah, maybe we shouldn't have gone for this queen a3 actually, because the endgame we do end up a pawn up, but our pawns are very, very weak. So after knight takes c5, you can go queen takes, knight takes. We have very disjointed pawn structure. It's not the best. So I think we go for this. We would take the knight, because I don't want to ruin the pawn structure too much. Here the pawn is being attacked, so black probably has to take here. On a4, and then I'll drop the bishop back and threaten to play b3. At the same time, the pawn on c5 is being attacked in a lot of positions. Yeah, so I dropped the bishop back now. Bishop to e2. Hey, bishop takes c2 doesn't work because I take with the king. And now I'm not only threatening to take on c5, I'm also threatening to play pawn to b3. Also, knight c6 would be a mistake in this position, because I still play b3, and then the bishop is trapped. Because if the bishop comes back to b5, I can first trade off queens, and then capture the bishop on b5. So yeah, there's definitely quite a few problems here for black to try and solve, and probably unable to solve all of them. Actually, that's a really good move again. It's probably the only move, but it's a very good move because it solves the problem of the c5 pawn, also the problem of the pin. So the easiest solution here for white is probably just to take. I don't see a better move. So it might be tempting to take this pawn because you do end up a pawn up, but I'm thinking my pawn structure is quite compromised and I don't really want to weaken my pawn structure that much. So I would rather play equal material with a very solid pawn structure. There's no pressure now on d4 pawn, so I'm just going to play bishop d3, attack this pawn on g6, and it looks like a very pleasant position for white in general. You have to watch out for some knight g6 ideas though. This is the main issue. I think this was a very slow move. That was definitely looked like a mistake. It gives me time to play rook h1. I think he should have gone rook g8 straight away. King b8 was definitely unnecessary because now after rook g8, rook h1, I'm threatening g5. I'm not exactly sure what the idea either was. This one, so the idea is to just take the pawn. So I could go f5 here. I could just take the knight and then take the pawn. So if I take the knight, pawn takes, rook takes, let's say rook takes, rook takes, rook f8, I take here, takes the pawn, I have to go rook f6. I mean, the endgame does look pretty good for me, but if it's winning or not, I'm not sure. If I go f4 to f5, the knight comes into this square, I take, rook takes, rook g8. There's also positions where he can just capture my bishop and give me the double pawns. So this one I don't like as much. So this is a bit on intuition, but I'm just going to take here on g6. Because I didn't think the position with allowing the knight to f4 would be that great. So I'll go for this one. He's playing very, very passively. He should have gone rook to f8 and try to put some pressure. He's just allowing me to sort of control the position a lot more. Now I'm just gonna pin the bishop and then bring my knight into g5 square, threatening this. So the endgame is lost as well. So even if black goes for the endgame, it should be losing. So yeah, I think this endgame should be winning for white. So I can't just take the rook, I think. So if I take the rook, king takes. Let's say I play c3, takes. King like marches in, and it should be winning, but there's no clear pawn breakthroughs. I can also just keep the rook on the board temporarily. That's also good. For example, rook h7, threatening this. It might be simpler, actually. I want to get my king to e3. King c1, king d2, king e3. I also don't want this rook to get into the game. Go to here. I'm gonna block this rook. So if the rook goes to f8, I'm gonna offer the trade again. We'll get back into the endgame. Oh, there's also this move, knight to f7, which I don't think actually does much, apart from the fact that bishop e8 is losing to knight d8 check. That's really the only point behind this move, but it could be a very strong one. Yeah, I'm gonna go for it. Knight to f7 just to stop the rook. Also, bishop e8, like I said, is losing because knight d8 check, which yeah, opponent falls into. So we have knight check. Also, if he didn't go bishop there, I could also just move my king slowly in, and eventually I can move my knight back to d6 and attack the bishop if I want to. But yeah, this one is winning because I can take the pawn, and also this defends at the same time as well. What's the best way to do this? Can I actually take here? Take there with check, and then take here. I should just take here straight away. That's simplest. The rook actually has no moves to go to. Yeah, okay. Let's just take the pawn. It's much simpler. Yeah, rook f7. Okay, we can trade rooks now because we're up a lot of material. So now we can trade, play knight g5 and start pushing the pawns up the board. Okay, so f5, f6, f7. Okay. Okay, let's have a look at that game. So yeah, this h4 is called the tile variation, and yeah, it offers a lot of good opportunities for white, especially at like sub 2000 level. There's a lot of traps that your opponent can definitely fall into. So the two main moves here are either pawn to h6 or pawn to h5. So the most common trap is if they go e6, the idea of h4 is to play g4, and no matter where the bishop goes now, let's say bishop e4, f3, bishop g6, h5 will trap the bishop. So this is why you can't play e6, and this is the idea. So if they play pawn to h5 is the main move, and after this, a really tricky line is to play bishop g5, and after queen b6, bishop to d3. So this is a very sort of trappy line, which I think is quite good in general for white for different rating ranges, especially like sub 2000, like I said. It works very, very well. So you can have a look at this because the variations after queen takes b2 pretty much never work for black, but a lot of people will go for those. Of course, you can also play the main line, which is like bishop d3 or knight c3, which is also very good for white. After the move pawn to h6, yeah, we continue with g4. If bishop goes to h7, then e6 is a very strong move here for white. And after pawn takes bishop to d3, the exchange of bishops will leave black with a big hole on this g6 square. So most often people don't do this. But this bishop d7 I think is a better move. But in the game, black never really managed to get in the move c5. So he should have actually just gone c5 straight away if he wanted to play this move. Or try to prepare it with queen c7 and then try to play c5. Because this is one of the key pawn breaks. A bishop e7 runs into some problems because it doesn't develop the knight. So for example, after the move pawn to h5, yeah, the knight's going to have problems developing because it's being blocked by the bishop. And the exchange of these bishops again just makes it harder for black to get any freeing pawn breaks in. And in the game, we got a very pleasant position here. Queen a3, c5, bishop takes a6, bishop back to e2. And yeah, we had a nice advantage the whole way through, but I think we sort of gave away the advantage a little bit round about here. We definitely let it slip a bit. King b8 I think is definitely a mistake. Should have gone knight to g6. And here maybe like black is close to equal here because of our previous moves. I think we made a mistake somewhere to allow this position because here black is probably okay. We have to go f5, but if the knight gets to f4, it's probably okay for black, especially compared to the game, because after king to b8, rook to h1, yeah, this one is just clearly lost. Especially after bishop there, like you have to go rook f8, I think, and try to play for this. But even this doesn't work. Like you can actually play knight g5, and there's a very nice tactic here. If rook takes f4, you can play rook to h8 check, and if the king comes across, we play knight takes e6, forking the rook. So the rook can't actually take on f4 after knight to g5. So it's a very nice defensive move. and yeah, this is just a very good position in general. Yeah, in the game, after allowing us to pin, this is clearly winning as well. So I hope you enjoyed this game. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all on the next speedrun game. Take care.